A newborn baby is among 7 COVID-19 deaths at Wolfson Children's Hospital since the pandemic began. The infant was just 2 weeks old and died within 24 hours of another child at the hospital this week.
They are among 4 children who lost their battle with COVID-19 during the latest surge of the Delta variant. And News4JAX reporter Jim Piggott is joining us outside the hospital on the South Bank. Jim, this is just so disturbing for parents and grandparents to hear.
It is as disturbing as it is. What we're understanding, though, this could get much worse. You know, we've been watching as more and more kids are being treated here at the hospital, and for the most part, the outcome is pretty good. But with these cases, it just hasn't been, and that's a surprise to many people, including some doctors. In the past, we learned that kids with COVID generally survive, but now with this Delta strain, more kids are facing a difficult fight with the virus. And with 2 recent deaths, including a 2-week-old baby, it's troubling even for doctors. What's your gut reaction to all of that?
Yeah, it's just nauseated. At the end of the day, I am a father of 3 young kids that can't get vaccinated because they're too young, right? So it's nauseating because they're not protected at this point.
We learned of the 2 recent deaths at Worsened through this online community meeting with doctors. It was then that Dr. Michael Gale of Worsened's ICU talked about the 2 who died, but also talked about the other young patients.
However, with this increased surge that we've seen recently, we have seen double the amount of children being hospitalized.
Right now at Wolfson, 19 kids are in the hospital with COVID, and 4 of them are in the ICU. That number has been holding steady. But Dr. Nwsap, who's not with the hospital, says it could get bad. What do you think we are going to see, I'd say, in the next month or 2? I mean, do you think we'll be devastated by what happens?
Yeah, Jim, I really hope not. I really hope not for my children's sake and for the children of other parents. But if you look at the natural course of this disease, it's tricky, and I keep saying that because if I get infected today, if a child gets infected today, they may not have symptoms for the next 2 to 14 days.
You know, the really concern is the long-term complications for those that survive. In adults, about 30% of those hospitalized really see problems, and they say that's the same for kids. Down the line, they're going to have problems with breathing, respiratory problems. We're live at Wolfson's Children's Hospital. Jim Piggott, Channel 4, the local station.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. We hope you all had a very safe and good 3-day weekend. Let it be known that report again is why the National Newspaper Publishers Association endorses vaccination. And just to put things into a little bit more context too, the CDC, as I'm reading this report here, is reporting that some new updates. The unvaccinated are more protected than you think. It says that how small are the chances of the average unvaccinated American contracting COVID? Well, probably 1 in 5,000 per day, and even lower for people who take precautions or live in a highly vaccinated community. So again, the message becomes protect yourself and others you love. Now, let us bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey. And of course, I'm practicing all the precautions. I'm at an airport getting ready to fly back to Washington, D.C. But I just want to greet everybody on this Tuesday morning. On behalf of the Black Press of America, Karen Carter Richards, our distinguished chair, we're excited about our National Leadership Awards reception next week. And we look forward to today's broadcast special interview with the leader, the president and CEO of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson.
Absolutely. And first, Dr. Chavis, the headlines. This morning, we remember Michael K. Williams, who portrayed Omar Little in The Wire and Chalky White in Boardwalk Empire. Michael K. Williams died last night at the age of 54. The New York Police Department confirmed that the actor was found dead at 2 p.m. inside of his Brooklyn residence. Michael Williams was a regular on many acclaimed HBO series, including The Wire, Boardwalk Empire, the Night of and Lovecraft Country. He played Leonard on Sundance TV crime series Hap and Leonard and had a recurring role on J.J. Abrams' Alias. He also acted in acclaimed films, including Inherent Vice, 12 Years a Slave, Gone, Baby Gone, and The Road. Tributes are pouring in all morning, all night, last night, all morning, this morning. Michael K. Williams, we certainly remember that great actor. Dr. Chavis, I know that was another big loss that you have endured there. I think we lost Dr. Chavis at the airport, but again, we remember Michael K. Williams this morning. Also in the news, as many children and teens return to a new school year after Labor Day, educators and advocates are sounding the alarm on the challenges faced by Black and Hispanic students. Those students were left behind during the pandemic, according to a Department of Education report released this summer. That showed this COVID-19 pandemic worsened disparities in access and opportunities for students of color in public schools. According to the 2020 census, about 1 in 10 Black and Latinx homes lack constant or consistent computer access, compared to only 6.7% of white households, meaning children had a harder time accessing online classroom materials, homework, or virtual classes themselves. And now, as they go back to school, the COVID variants that have come up, including the Delta variant, the Nwsap variant, which is now sweeping the country, has been found in several places inside the United States. They pose even more of a threat. Again, we encourage you to protect yourself and certainly protect those precious children. Earlier, Dr. Chavis and I had the opportunity of speaking with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP President and CEO Derrick Johnson. Derrick Johnson, again, reaffirmed why the NAACP remains the oldest and most trusted civil rights organization. We speak with Derrick Johnson, the president and CEO of the NAACP. Let's take a look. Always a privilege to have our next guest, a very special guest. The National Newspaper Publishers Association always welcomes this gentleman with open arms, and I'll let you do the honors of introducing him.
The president and CEO of the NAACP, Brother Johnson, is a close friend of the Black press, longstanding friend, and we have a strategic alliance between the NNPA and the NAACP. So without further delay, let us welcome President Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP. Brother Derrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, good to be here.
Well, thank you so much, President Johnson. We're just going to jump right into it. We know that you at the march. You're always leading these marches. You're always leading these demands for rights for all people, particularly, of course, people of color. But tell us about this particular issue of voting rights. We know that so many states are now, Republican-led states, are passing or at least introducing these voter suppression, voter oppression laws. What is your thoughts, and what is the NAACP doing about it?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity, and always good to be with you, Dr. Chavis.
Yes.
The marches, demonstration, protests are actually the events between the work. The work is actually getting public policy passed. And in this case, federal legislation to protect our right to vote. In response to the 2020 election and then the runoff election in January of this year, we're watching many states across the country trying to augment access to voting in an attempt, in my opinion, for elected officials to select voters as opposed to how democracy actually should work, where voters select the elected officials. So for the NAACP, we are working hard to get the Senate to do their job. The House passed the John Lewis Reauthorization Act. Now it's for the Senate to do their job. And we're not entertaining conversations about procedural rules. We're just simply saying, get it done.
Yeah, and obviously a big obstacle is the filibuster. We know that the Senate is evenly divided, 50-50 Democrats and Republicans. But the problem is that this is a situation where you would need, as currently constituted, you'd need all 50 Democrats plus 10 Republicans. We really don't have any Republicans. And you have 2 Democratic senators who are opposed to the doing anything to the filibuster, whether abolishing it or going around it. Have you had an opportunity to talk to the senator out of West Virginia and the other senator? And I'm sorry, the names are escaping me right now, but you know who I'm speaking of.
Well, let's be clear. This has nothing to do with the filibuster. This is all about political will. If there's the political will to make it happen, it will happen. We just spent $2 trillion in the last 20 years in Afghanistan because there was political will to waste our money that way. We just passed a $3.5 trillion budget package, and originally there wasn't 10 senators in the Republican Party who supported it, but it was the political will to get around a procedural rule. So I'm starting from the place of power. The place of power is 50 senators who will decide that this is in the interest of our democracy, the interest of this nation. And Senators Manchin and Sinema, they're giving cover to a few other members of the Democratic Party who have not come forward to express the political will to get this done. So I'm not distracted by procedural rules. I'm not distracted by what the protocols of the Senate used to be in the past. The filibuster itself is a segregationist rule. So that should not inhibit our ability to protect democracy and the rights of voters to fully engage and participate.
Yeah, Dr. Chavis?
Yes, President Derrick Johnson, first of all, again, we salute your leadership and the leadership of the NAACP on the forefront of protecting the civil rights, in this case, the voting rights, not only of African Americans, but all Americans. As I travel around the country, President Johnson, I'm seeing a new vitality. Can you talk about the thrust of our nation's oldest and largest and boldest civil rights organization, the NAACP? Where are you going? I know that our focus today is on voting rights, but you mentioned something in response to Stacey's question about the power of the people, organize and mobilize. As we conclude 2021, there's so much speculation about 2022, whether or not progressives are going to lose the House, lose the Senate, and then eventually lose the White House. What's that plan? You know, we know what's at stake, but can you just comment of how the NAACP plans to not only ensure that these public policies are passed ultimately by Congress to restore and protect voting rights, but to protect us from what appears to be a lot of handwriting on the wall about repression on the way back to our communities?
Well, first of all, you know, just like your tenure in this seat, we have to take this to the communities where people are impacted, take it to the people. And the people would drive the conversation. Oftentimes, far too many of our organizations look at themselves as top down, not bottom up. NAACP, we're a bottom up operation. And so if you see a new energy on the ground, our job is to empower the leadership, the expertise that's in local communities across the country, link that expertise up, link that energy up so we can have a national movement. And that's what we're building here as it relates to protecting our right to vote. We've launched a campaign. We're targeting cities. We're targeting states. We're having calls go right to members of the Senate. Right now, it's not just the 2 members, it's all 50 members that we need to move this legislation. And once we lock that in, we're not saying let's deal with the filibuster. That's a distraction. We're saying get it done. At the end of the day, for the civil rights community, our work has primarily focused in 3 areas: to protect our labor so that we're not exploited or for cheap or free labor, franchise so we can have a voice in public policy and how our tax dollars are done, and the future of education. Those have been the 3-legged stools, and you can add in housing, policing, and everything else in there. But that's the most important. You knock any of those three legs off, then we are back in a condition of servitude. So it is our job to make sure we protect and advance the franchise, our right to vote. It is through our vote collectively deposited is where we have the power and the voice, and that's the work of the NAACP.
Yeah, and President Johnson, we got the census report, but how troubling is the census considering the fact that among other things, it was done during the pandemic when many could not participate. Is there something that you guys are doing to perhaps push this administration to take another look at that census, perhaps even adding some more time, restarting the clock, if you will, and canvassing again?
Well, I'm not sure which pandemic you're talking about, the pandemic of white supremacy from the last administration or the health pandemic that we're currently in. At any rate, the census count is only a snapshot in time. And so for us, we need to look deeper. What does this mean in terms of Black mobility? What does this mean in terms of social opportunity? What does this mean in terms of economic positioning? And the outgrowth of the African-American population out of some of our population centers, the urban cores to the suburban outer ring, it resets how we need to look at political power, electoral political power, while at the exact same time, we have to double down in the region of this country where we're strongest. That's in the Southeast region, the former Confederate states. And how do we really make a difference in those states? Look what just happened in Georgia. The potential in Texas is great. That's why they're fighting so hard, not to mention South Carolina, Mississippi, and North Carolina. We have numerical momentum, but numerical momentum alone is not the destination. How we use it, how we refocus our attention, and where we create force multipliers to improve our quality of life. That's how we should use the data that was captured that snapped in time. The pandemic of white supremacy is what we're fighting against, but we can overcome it because that's how we do. We have always won every fight we've engaged in. The problem is we're not always engaged in the right fight.
Wow.
Exactly.
Very, very, very interesting. And
so one thing to say, I know time is very limited. As a life member of the NAACP, President Johnson, will you please tell us how people can join? We have a lot of millennials and Generation Z every morning that watch our program across the United States. How can people join the NAACP online? Is there an app? Can they go on their devices? How can they join the NAACP? We want to make sure that millions of our people join.
Well, NAACP.org, we just did a refresh of our website. It's really important for all of our institutions, NAPA, NAACP, to look at that census data, recognize the average age of African Americans is mid-30. And the work we do, how we show up, need to reflect that demographics. Why? Because that's the future of who we are. NAACP is like a double hump camel. We have young people up into 25, then we lose them. And then we get them back around 55 throughout retirement. But that's that middle generation, that's the majority population of African Americans. We have to do all we can to communicate with that constituency base as we empower them. That's why you see a reemergence of young leaders in our local units, whether it's Cleveland or DC or many places in between, that the average age of our youth leadership, now our young leadership, is hovering around 40.
President Johnson, before we let you go, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you too about the importance of DC statehood. I know you've spoken about this before, but talk to our audience about the importance of DC statehood.
DC statehood is critical. You cannot be in support of voting rights if you're not supporting the rights of the residents of DC to have a voice in public policy. They pay more than their fair share in taxes. They're larger than several states. There's no reason for DC to have to suffer through the disenfranchisement they've suffered through for so many years. 2 senators out of DC can make a world of good. There is no legitimate argument why it should not be. That's why we have long supported DC statehood, because disenfranchisement in any means is disenfranchised for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. President Derrick Johnson of the NAACP. Dr. Chavis, your closing thoughts with the president of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson.
Well, again, I just want to salute my president, Derrick Johnson. Wish him well, wish his family well. I hope your family in Mississippi is okay. That storm going through Louisiana and Mississippi and other parts. And you're right, we're fighting on multiple fronts, including the pandemic, including the white supremacy. But I just want to say, I'm encouraged, President Johnson. I hear so many young people coming to me today saying, man, how can I join the NAACP? That to me is a indication that our young people want to fight. And it's a question of how to fight and where to fight and pool our resources, pool our energy. Because you're right, from the bottom up, at the end of the day, the power is with the people.
Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you for the opportunity as we fight forward, fight for the future.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. God bless.
President Derrick Johnson of the NAACP. Thanks so much. And there was our discussion with the president of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson. Again, there's so much work to be done, so many issues there that you all know that the nation is confronting, especially those of color. So we will continue to monitor that. The National Newspaper Publicists Association maintains a strategic alliance with the NAACP. A couple of other news notes this morning. El Salvador has become the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. So those in the NFT world and the Bitcoin world, well, El Salvador has jumped out in front to adopt it as legal tender. Also, the federal pandemic unemployment benefits in the U.S. expired yesterday. More than 7 million people will lose aid unless the government acts. The same thing with the eviction moratorium that's being battled out in the Supreme Court. So these are things that we'll continue to watch. You can read about these things at blackpressusa.com and most of our member newspapers across the country, papers like the Houston Forward-Times, the Dallas Examiner, the Washington Informer, the Baltimore Times, Mississippi Link, New Journal and Guide in Virginia. So many of our papers, the West Side Gazette down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We have papers across the nation. You can read about these important stories that affect our community in our newspapers. They all have fantastic websites as well. You can go to, for those who can't get that good old-fashioned physical newspaper. Growing up in New York, we always had that physical newspaper, whether it's the New York Times, the Daily News, any of those Newsday, New York Post. We carried it on the subway, we carried it on the buses, and we read them. The Amsterdam News, of course, was at the top of that list. Some of the comments I wanted to point out during the conversation with Derrick Johnson. I wanted to bring up, obviously, Bobby Henry is a frat brother with just about everybody. Bobby is the man. He says, "What's up, Brother Johnson," who is a frat brother of his. Michelle Madison, she says, in fact, compliment to Dr. Chavis. Derrick Johnson reminds her of Dr. Chavis during his time at the NAACP. She says this is a great alliance, talking about the strategic alliance between the NAACP and the NNPA. And Naima Latif, and I know I did not pronounce your name correctly. You have to forgive me, but is there a website that lists all the members of the U.S. Senate and congressional representatives and their voting records? The first site that comes to mind would be Ballotpedia, but I'm not sure that they list everyone together, but certainly individually there. Ballotpedia does that. Lynn Spivey says she's also a lifetime member and branch president, NYCHA. You go, Lynn Spivey. We appreciate that. And of course, we invite always your comments. We invite your questions during every single broadcast of Let It Be Known. And as they come up, we try to tackle them as they come up. But don't forget also, coming up very soon, September 16th, the National Newspaper Publishers Association's National Leadership Awards. We're going to have it's going to be a very good night, I should say. Senator Cory Booker will be honored, as well as Dr. James Hildreth, Dr. Ebony Hilton, the Allison Felix, the track star, the Olympic star with 11 gold medals. She'll be honored as well. Raphael Warnock, the senator out of Georgia, and Cori Bush. You talk about someone taking the lead in this whole battle against this eviction moratorium and against homelessness, period. Cori Bush, the Congresswoman, has done a fantastic job. And so she'll be among those awarded for their excellence in leadership at the National Newspaper Publishers Association's National Leadership Awards, September 16th. So register today. It's free at www.virtualnnpa2021.com. We look forward to seeing you all there. And follow the Black Press and the National Newspaper Publishers Association on TikTok at NNPA Black Press. I'm so thrilled. I don't do TikTok a lot, but now I'm starting to look at TikTok. My kids are into TikTok, like many kids are. But Carrington York, and Howard University student, manages the Black Press of America's TikTok account, and she is so entertaining. Check her out, NNPA Black Press on TikTok. Let it be known, remember this: be selective, be objective, and be an asset to the collective. Get vaccinated, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.